Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, a podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this episode we're tackling Crystal of Storms, the distressingly recent fighting fantasy book by Rhianna Pratchett with art by Ava Escalinen. Crystal of Storms was published in 2020 by Scholastic. Rhianna Pratchett doesn't have much of a pedigree in adventure game books, but she does have a very strong pedigree in gaming more generally, having written award-winning scripts for video games such as Mirror's Edge and Tomb Raider. She's also involved in maintaining the legacy of her father, the celebrated author of comic fantasy Terry Pratchett. She's worked on the tabletop game Bardsong from Steamforged Games as lead narrative designer, and so she's done a lot of work in fields that are strongly related to fighting fantasy. I think she's certainly got more relevant background experience than Charlie Higson did, which is an encouraging sign. There are some less encouraging signs. I was able to pick the book up for a couple of quid, which doesn't generally augur all that well, although that could just be because this is quite a recent book and it was probably printed in fairly large quantities. Also, the cover art is very much not my jam, though I am delighted to see that it's a full illustration rather than a dinky little picture in a circle in the middle of the cover. It shows some kind of dog with wings in front of an island, and is rendered in a very stylised digital medium, and there's a cloud in the background which has cartoon eyes and a worried expression. It's not a cover that fills me with confidence that this book is going to be aimed at my demographic. That is not a problem per se, but it does gesture towards the identity issues that fighting fantasy has in 2020. On the one hand, you could get old hands like Jonathan Green to turn out brilliant books that appeal to the demographic of ageing nerds that grew up with fighting fantasy. On the other hand, you could try and bring new players in by focusing on a younger cohort and producing books that feel more contemporary. Selfishly, I'd rather they did the former because I am one of the ageing nerds, but I also recognise that it was a failure to bring in new players that did for fighting fantasy the first time round. Interestingly, this isn't a problem that is limited to fighting fantasy. You can actually see big corporations, in particular Disney, going through the same identity crisis at the moment with their Marvel and Star Wars IP. There's a whole group of kids growing up who ought to be the target demographic for Marvel and Star Wars, but both IPs have become loaded down with convoluted backstories that have been growing for the last 20 years or so. Disney reckons that you're going to need to go back and watch a new version of the last Avengers film before you see their latest offering, which is an insane thing to say to people when your films need to break $1 billion or so to break even. There's a bunch of legacy fans who have been with the IPs for a very long time who will be only too happy to do that, but it's not a great way to make your movies welcoming to families thinking about introducing their kids to the Marvel stuff they grew up with. Also, there is the reality that for kids coming of age now, Marvel and Star Wars are the stuff their parents are into, and that makes it automatically suspect to a lot of them, and rightly so. The problem is that to try and capture a new audience for these long-running IPs risks alienating the legacy fans who want complex, deep stories that do call back to many earlier events. A reboot, the simplest way to deal with the issues, often gives legacy fans the excuse they need to get off the faintly exhausting treadmill of keeping up with bloated IPs and endless brand extensions. Thankfully, there's not billions of dollars on the line when a new fighting fantasy gamebook comes out, but I do think Scholastic are in something of the same bind, and I find it interesting that they've shown a preference for returning the series to its roots as a set of kids' books. It's not that they've done nothing for the old heads. They've got Ian Livingstone to return to the franchise, which is really cool, and there's even a fresh Steve Jackson to tuck into shortly. But all the books have generally kept the system simple and the style approachable, and they've shown a preference for more modern digital art than the pen and ink illustrations that dominated the 80s and 90s. Early fighting fantasy art was heavily influenced by the art of tabletop role-playing games, whereas Eva Eskalinen's art shows virtually none of that influence, and I'm certain that was the choice made by the editors who want to position fighting fantasy as more in the children's fiction genre than in the gaming genre. And there's sound commercial reasons for doing that, I think. Gaming in the 1980s and 90s was an unrecognisably different space to gaming in 2020. Trying to sell fighting fantasy as a game to kids who can play Fortnite on their phone feels like a highway to nowhere, if I'm honest. Selling it as a book with some novel interactive elements feels much more doable. Targeting readers rather than gamers makes all the sense in the world. None of this is strictly relevant, but I do think it's worth considering where adventure game books sit in the wider culture of the 21st century and trying to tease out where they might stand the best chance of thriving. I do still believe that game books offer something unique for both players and designers. I see 3 future paths for game books. The first is to do what Scholastic are doing and lean into them as books. The second is to lean towards the solo RPG space, as we see with the big fat open world books. And the third is to embrace digital space, as we see with visual novels and the popularity of Twine games. All of these, I think, offer good paths to continued relevancy in an increasingly digital age. The question is, how does Crystal of Storms fit in with a medium undergoing an odd identity crisis? Well, we're going to find out, and I'm not going to bother with a précis of the rules. It's standard fighting fantasy, and if you don't know by now, then God help you, honestly. I've generated a character called Cleek Bumglimpser. They have a skill of 8, a stamina of 21, and a luck of 12, so a little bit underpowered, potentially, in the skill department. They have the bare minimum of starting equipment, just the sword, backpack, and lantern. With that, I think we're ready to play Crystal of Storms. Background. The Tempest children of Pangara, god of the wind, have long reigned over the waters between Alanzia and Cool. Many who sought to cross the perilous ocean of tempests have lost their lives to the raging storms or the terrifying sea creatures that dwell there. But deep within Zephyrus, largest of all the tempests, where the air is sweet and calm, lies the floating archipelago of Pangaria. The 5 islands of Cirrus, Altus, Cumulus, Incus, and Asperitas surround a 6th small island known as Nimbus. You were born and raised in Pangaria, but whilst many of your friends have opted to join the working communities of their home isles, such as Cloudkin farming on the water island of Altos, or wrangling the magical yet tasty fauna of Cirrus, you dreamed bigger. You didn't want to settle for just one island. You wanted to see it all. And so, you decided to join the Skywatch, the Guardians of Peace within the whole of Pangaria. But your beloved home has a lot of peace to go around, and your first few weeks in the Skywatch have been rather dull. A parade of lost pets and mediating petty squabbles regarding overgrown shrubs. Your heart cries out for adventure. This is very efficiently written, I will say that much. I think writing for video games does probably push you towards a relatively efficient style of storytelling. It's an interesting setting. It doesn't feel naturally part of the fighting fantasy world. It feels more like a totally fresh creation, but it's a very engaging concept. I love floating islands. They're really cool. I loved all the floating island bits in the most recent Zelda game, a game I didn't otherwise absolutely love. But the ability to zoom up into the air to a bunch of floating islands was really cool. One fine morning, an urgent message arrives at your watch house, summoning all the Skywatch to an emergency meeting in the Citadel on Nimbus. It seems that Adventure has finally listened and answered your plea. Full of nervous excitement, your entire watch house boards the local flyer, one of the small airships that transport Pangarians between islands. No one seems to know the purpose of the meeting, but it is bound to be something quite extraordinary for the entire Skywatch to be summoned. You've only been to the Citadel once when you were sworn into the Skywatch, and it still holds newness and excitement for you. Stretching, you lean your head out of the flyer window and crane your neck in order to get the first glimpse of the towering spires and sculpted ramparts of the Citadel, the home of Pangaria's lawmakers, diplomats, and island officials. The flyer's goblin pilot wearily reminds you to keep all limbs inside the ship, lest you lose something essential. Although you have heard tell that there are tribes of goblins out in the world who are aggressive towards humans and other species, the goblins of Pangaria are largely friendly. More importantly, they developed the technomancy, a blend of elemental magic and engineering that keeps Pangaria airborne. You're just about to disembark and take your first steps onto Nimbus when your commander, Captain Halleck, looks aghast. "By Zephyr's breath!" he exclaims, looking directly at you. "I've forgotten my hovers. Can't be seen in the Citadel without those. Please retrieve them from the watch house, recruit." He pats his pockets, searching for something. "Bring my queen bag too." You nod. As the newest member of your watch house, You don't really have a choice. Remaining on board your flyer as the rest of the watch disembarks, you hope you can get there and back without missing anything exciting. Seeing your frustration, the flyer's pilot softens and cranks up the craft to its top speed and brings you right up to the watchhouse door. You rush inside and soon return clutching the small leather purse jingling with coins and carrying Halleck's hovers. Up close, you can't help but marvel at the intricate, light-as-air metalwork of these portable wings, powered by storm crystals, harvested and gathered from the local tempest by the elemental stormborns. You look forward to the day when you are senior enough to get your own pair. You check the crystal gauge, which is attached to a small blue-green storm crystal that has a tiny imprisoned tempest swirling in it. It's a third full, but there's no time to charge the wings. You throw yourself back into the flyer. The little airship has barely had time to set down when you leap from the bulwark and start to sprint towards the citadel. Suddenly, a great explosion rocks Nimbus and waves of energy surge outward from the fortress, catapulting you through the air and over the edge of the island. You begin to plummet downwards. So that is the introduction. Very efficient, as I said earlier. There's some really cool elements in there. Again, I don't think they feel super fighting fantasy, but who doesn't want the ability to traverse between floating mountains on a pair of magical wings? That's really cool. Airships are really cool. Everyone thinks airships are really cool, I'm pretty sure. So, lots of fun ideas in there at the outset, and we have kind of started in the middle of the action, which is always exciting to me. No messing about, something exciting has happened, and we're going to have to deal with it. The explosion has knocked the wind out of you. There's only one thing you can do to save yourself as you tumble through the howling air. You manage to struggle into Halleck's hovers, and the wings unfold with a soft thwack, thwack, thwack sound. Your fall ceases as the hovers slow your descent and hold you aloft. Your relief turns to fear as you look up and realise that now it's Nimbus which is falling straight towards you. Using your shoulder muscles to operate the hovers, you manage to steer yourself out of the path of the falling island as it hurtles past, tossing you around like a feather on the breeze. You gain control, only to see Nimbus crashing into the sea far below. You watch in horror as the island begins to sink beneath the waves. You become aware of an unsettling humming sound, and your wings begin to shudder. The crystal that powers the hovers must be running out of charge. There's just enough power left to fly you to the safety of your home island. And we get a choice of home islands. Is your home island Cirrus, the farming island, Altos, the water island, or Cumulus, the island of trade? Well, I'm going to discount Cumulus as a starter purely on the grounds that there's every possibility that if you go to the island of trade, we'll have to go on a shopping trip. And as we all know, I am vehemently opposed to going on shopping trips by this point in Fighting Fantasy. Altos, the water island, sounds interesting and mysterious. And Cirrus, the farming island, sounds kind of generic, I want to say. Of them, the most intriguing possibility is Altos, the water island, so that's where I'm going to choose to be from. As you descend towards Altos, the sentient clouds which are farmed there and known as cloudkin scatter like frightened sheep, some of them shedding a little water as they float speedily away from you. You drink in the beautiful sight of Altos from above. Lakes, rivers and waterfalls sparkle in the sunshine. Despite the horrors of what you've just witnessed, it gladdens your heart just a little to see your home isle. But in your joy at seeing Altos, you fly too close to a mother cloudkin who has several young cloudkin drifting around her. The young ones flee to their mother in fright and fold themselves into her fluffy, cloudy depths. She angrily lashes out at you with a bolt of lightning which strikes your hovers and sends you tumbling to the ground. Luckily, you land in the mud, dirty and damp, but still alive. Lose 5 stamina points. Stamina now 16. So this is going extremely well. You scrape off the worst of the mud and stare across to where Nimbus used to be. Now there's nothing but air and dust which crackles with a strange energy. Whatever brought the island down must have been incredibly powerful. Sadness gives way to a new resolve. You're going to find out what happened to Nimbus before the rest of Pangaria starts to fall from the sky. Your hovers aren't badly damaged, but they are out of charge, so you will need to find some way of charging them up in order to fly anywhere else. That means that for now, you're on foot. On the bright side, you've managed to keep hold of Halleck's coin bag. You're pretty sure he won't mind you using it in the line of duty. Add 10 gold pieces to your adventure sheet. You check your waist. Your trusty short sword is still there, and you can add this to the weapons box on your adventure sheet. You look around for a place to start your investigation. There is a Cloudkin farm nearby. They might be able to help you with supplies and information. You head towards the farm. This is where the Cloudkin are born and raised when young before they are let out to roam in the skies above Altos, the Zephyrus tempest preventing them from drifting too far away. There, they grow fat with rain and are cared for at ground level by Altos's many farmers, and in the air by Canidors, winged dog-like creatures. I guess that's one of the ones we saw on the front of the book. Any island that needs rain or shade can request a herd of Cloudkin, which will come to the island and deposit their rain before returning to Altos to be fattened up again. Cloudkin are usually gentle and passive, aside from protective mothers, as you just found out. But as you get closer, the farm seems unusually quiet. There are no workers outside or Canidors in the air, and there are even a few discarded tools lying about. A chill goes down your spine. Something bad has happened here. Suddenly, there's a thunderous growl. An enormous black Cloudkin floats out from behind one of the farm buildings, lightning sparking from in its swirling dark depths. This is like no Cloudkin you've ever seen before. The energy from the Nimbus must have mutated it from a benign rain cloud into an angry ball of storm energy. And there is a picture of the enormous black Cloudkin floating out from behind the farm. It's pretty good, honestly. There's an interesting depth of feel to it. I really quite like the way the Cloudkin has been rendered, with a mixture of sort of strong geometric shapes and soft pastel, foggy, almost charcoal-esque colouring. Yeah, it's actually really pretty good. I mean, I do not think that this is a style of art that really benefits from being in grayscale. I think this would look really good if you had proper colour to play with, but in black and white, it just kind of looks a bit faded and washed out. And I think that is one of the reasons why that pen and ink style that early Fighting Fantasy made use of is just a better choice for this kind of book, because it is art that is designed to be reproduced well in a black and white context. This, I think, would look great with some colour on it, but as it is, it just feels a bit faded and a bit like you're looking at it through a gauzy haze. Here, take this! You turn to see a young woman dressed in waterproof farming clothes. She throws you a Cloudkin staff, a special staff used in the farming of sentient clouds. Add the Cloudkin staff to your adventure sheet. Let's subdue the storm, she shouts over the rumbling, thunderous growls of the Stormkin. With this woman fighting with you for the duration of the battle, you may add 2 points when calculating your attack strength, and you may increase any damage you cause by 1 point, and you may reduce any damage you suffer in battle by 1 point. Together, you can take on the Stormkin. So, the Stormkin is quite tough, with a skill of 10 and a stamina of 10. My skill of 8's probably not going to be up to the job, except for the fact that I've got this burly farm woman supporting me in the battle, so that gives me an effective skill of 10. And with 16 stamina, I should be absolutely fine. I've only got to hit it 4 times, and I could test my luck to double that. No, it doesn't double it, it just adds an extra 2. So, I would do 5 damage on a successful hit if I test my luck. So that would mean I've only got to hit it 3 times, which is pretty doable, even on a 50-50. So, anyway, without any further ado, I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the Stormkin. I suffered 2 points of damage and I used 1 point of luck just to make it a little bit quicker. So I have 1. My luck now 11. If you win and Altos is your home island, one thing happens. If you win but Altos is not your home island, something else happens. So that's quite fun. I like that. Yeah, that presumably means you can visit all of the islands, and which is your home island will impact how some of the encounters play out. That is a fun mechanic. I like that. But yeah, Altos is my home island, so we will go to that option. With a last roar of thunder, the Stormkin disintegrates into thin air. The Cloudkin farmer is your friend Nemi, and she throws her arms around you. "I was so worried about you," she cries. "I heard that something terrible had happened on Nimbus, but then the Cloudkin went stormy and all hell broke loose. Most of the other workers fled, but I wasn't going to give up the farm that easily." You tell Nemi that you are investigating what happened on Nimbus as the last member of the Skywatch still in Pangaria. Says Nemi thoughtfully. "You might not be the last one. I went to the watch house just before the explosion, and I heard snoring coming from inside. Seems like someone else didn't make the meeting. That sounds like something you should check out." "Right, well, the farm is safe for now. How about you keep the Cloudkin staff and I come with you on your travels? Well, at least on Altos. I can help you in a fight, and I want to find out what's happened to Flaps, my best Canidor. Most of the Canidors scattered when the explosion happened, and I haven't seen him since. I'm really worried about him. Hopefully he's in hiding. He always liked the area up by the Great Waterfall. And here, you'd better take this." She passes you a healing potion, which will restore up to 4 stamina points when drunk. So we're going to drink it now and get back up to 18. With Nemi by your side, you can add +2 points when calculating your attack strength, and you may increase any damage you cause by 1 point, and you may reduce any damage you suffer in battle by 1 point. Make a note of this on your adventure sheet. I will. If you choose to use the wooden Cloudkin staff in battle, you must reduce your attack strength by 1 point against opponents that aren't Cloudkin, as it is more cumbersome to use than your short sword. For now, add the staff to your adventure sheet. So I'm hoping that means that if you don't have the staff, you have to reduce your attack strength against Cloudkin by 1 point, because otherwise it's just strictly worse than the sword. But anyway, we'll find out. Now you have to decide where you and Nemi will go next. Do you want to go to the Altos Watch House, or do you want to go towards the Great Waterfall? I think we will go to the Watch House and investigate the snoring first. It's possible there might be more crystals to power my wings as well. You set off for the Watch House, taking the most direct route through an expanse of marshy land, while wondering who might still be left there and why they missed the meeting on Nimbus. As you ponder this, you hear a low rumbling sound. Fearing it might be another Stormkin, you ready your weapon. Suddenly, a globule of sticky glue flies through the air straight towards you. Test your luck. So I roll 7 below my luck of 11. Luck reduced to 10, and I am lucky. You manage to dodge the incoming globule, but you still have to deal with whatever launched it. A giant toad waddles out of the swamp, blocking your path. It readies itself to launch another gloopy missile in your direction. To fight the creature, go to one section. If you have a calming potion, you can use it now if you wish. Well, we have no option but to fight. You square up to the giant toad, preparing to battle it to the death. For one of you, at least. And it's going to be the giant toad, because the giant toad is a skill of 5 and a stamina of 7. I have an effective skill of 10, and I'm doing 3 damage a time. So, barring something very, very funny happening, I'm going to destroy this toad in basically 3 rounds. So, I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the giant toad. I took no damage. The best it managed was to draw 1 combat round with me. The giant toad disintegrates into a gelatinous heap. You notice some of the goo sticking to a nearby leaf. It has incredible sticking powers. You wrap the leaf around the sticky substance and carefully tuck it away. Add the sticky toad goop to your equipment list on your adventure sheet. You continue towards the Altos Watch House. You arrive at the Altos Watch House. You try the door, but discover it's locked. You press your ear to the wood. As Nemi said, the sound of loud snoring can be heard coming from inside. You need to get inside somehow. Is Nemi with you? Yes, she is. It feels like there's got to be some fairly subtle bits of design in order to balance whether or not Nemi is with you in the text. Hopefully it's a really subtle bit of design, and not just, as we've seen in a few fighting fantasy game books, just a long litany of small continuity errors. But yes, Nemi is with me, so we can have a go at breaking down the door. Nemi examines the door. Doesn't look too tough. Let's barge it down together. You ready yourself. 1, 2, 3, shouts Nemi. You both ram the door. Thunk. The wood splinters around the lock and the door flies open. You head inside. You find yourself within the familiarity of your own watch house and follow the sound of the snoring. It seems to be coming from a small back room off the barracks. As you enter, you hear a whooshing noise and catch sight of a log heading towards your face. Test your skill. 10, that is more than my skill of 8. I must say this book is very, very committed to things happening, which I definitely approve of. The log catches you on the side of the head. Ow. Lose 3 stamina points and 1 skill point. Thankfully, it's not enough to knock you out, but it makes your head spin. So we're now down to a skill of 7 and a stamina of 15. You stand up to see Galen Hillcroft, a fellow Altos Skywatch recruit, looking confused and holding a burning log from the fire. "Oh, it's you," Galen exclaims. "But how did you get out of the He stops himself. You feel anger rising within you. Did he know what was going to happen? Before he can react, you pin him against the wall with your sword at his neck and demand he tells you what he knows. Nothing, I swear. I just got a message saying not to go to the meeting at the Citadel on Nimbus this morning. It didn't say why. When I saw what happened, I decided to hide out here. I think I dozed off for a minute or two." You ask him who sent the message. He's reluctant to answer, and although you hate to threaten a fellow Skywatch officer, this is not a time for secrets. You push your sword against his throat. "Easy, you know me. I wouldn't do something like this, would I?" He's right. You are having a hard time believing Galen is responsible for bringing down Nimbus. He's far too lazy for a start. You relax your grip and lower your sword. Galen seizes the opportunity and shoves you back hard. By the time you regain your balance, he has grabbed a sword of his own. "Only one of us is getting out of this watch house alive, and I'm telling you now, pal, it's gonna be me." So we've got to fight Galen Hillcroft, skill 7, stamina 7, but something will happen if we reduce his stamina scored 3 points or fewer. I could kill Galen Hillcroft, technically, with Nemi fighting with me. If I win 1 attack round, that will reduce him to 4, and then if I test my luck on the next attack round, I'll be able to do 5 damage and kill him in 1 blow. I won't do that. It seems a bit unfair to try and break the game, but a little oversight there, unless it's been written in such a way as to take note of that, but by and large, no one remembers these little intricacies of the combat system when they're writing. So anyway, I'm going to very briefly roll some dice. Well, I hope it'll be brief. It should be brief with Nemi helping me. I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated Galen Hillcroft, and he reduced my stamina to 13. I reduced his stamina to 1. You raise your sword to dispense the killing blow. No, please," he begs. "Don't do this. If you let me live, I won't cause any trouble, and I'll find a way to help you, I swear." Do you want to let him live, or do you think he must die? He's already proven himself to be entirely treacherous. I think it is time for him to die. You see before you a fellow Skywatch officer who has let his comrades walk into danger and then tried to kill you. But can you really murder one of your own? Your brief hesitation gives him time to swing his sword upwards towards your leg. You move swiftly and the blade only deals a glancing blow. Lose 1 stamina point. You bring your sword down and finish off the coward. So stamina now 12. You search his body and find 1 gold piece and a calming potion. In his pocket you also find a crumpled note. It reads, Whatever you do, don't go to the Nimbus this morning. Your friend Paxlow. You recognise the name as being that of a goblin who works over on Asperitas, the island of technomancy. You also find an apple. Add these items to your adventure sheet, making a note that the apple will restore up to 2 stamina points when eaten. Well, I'm going to eat the apple now. So I was on 12, I'm now on 14. You leave the watch house. If you have not already visited the Great Waterfall and want to do so now, you may, or do you want to find the nearest flyer? I will visit the Great Waterfall, I think. I want a flying dog. You head out towards Altos's Great Waterfall. It is a source of water so pure that many Pangarians believe it holds healing properties. Every summer they come here to bathe in the azure blue pool at the foot of the waterfall in order to cure all their ills. You climb closer until you find yourself on a rocky outcropping overlooking the pool. The water looks deep and strangely dark. You feel hot and bothered. You've been working hard at your investigations. A nice cool dip in these waters could be just what you need. Oh, I tell you what, I feel with Cleek Bumglimpser because I am recording this on a very hot day in the middle of a heatwave in June 2026. It is pretty warm. I've already had one shower today. I may well have another one. Immersing myself in a pool sounds like a lovely thing. Do you want to take a swim in the lake, or do you want to walk along the bank to get closer to the Great Waterfall, or head to the Watchtower if you've not been there? I mean, I could use the stamina if it does have healing properties, but it does seem as though it might have been cursed a bit. But I want to find out whether or not it's been cursed, so I will take a swim in the lake. You decide that a cooling swim would be most welcome. Is Altos your home island? It is. You are just about to take a dive into the water when Nemi pulls you back. What are you doing, you idiot? She yells at you. Don't you see the colour of the water? You look down again. The water does look darker than you remember, and not its usual beautiful azure blue. Perhaps diving in isn't such a great idea after all. A scaly backbone cuts the surface of the water briefly before disappearing. Yes, definitely not a good idea. Thanks, Nemi. As you get nearer to the waterfall, you spy tracks in the mud. You crouch down. They look like paw prints, and fresh ones at that. You look up beyond the waterfall and see a goblin flyer moored at the top of the cliffs. You could use it to travel to more of the islands, but is your work on Altos done? Do you want to investigate the paw prints or the goblin flyer? Paw prints, please. You start to follow the tracks along the bank. After a while, the paw prints become muddy scuffs on the rocks, leading to a cave hidden behind the waterfall. Do you want to enter the cave or turn back and head for the goblin flyer? No, I want my flying dog. Please give me my flying dog. As you slowly creep into the cave, you hear a sound that alternates between a growling and a whining. Something large approaches from out of the shadows, eyes aglow. Is Nemi with you? It is, yeah, she is indeed. The shadow unfolds a pair of wings. As you get closer, you can see it's a Canidor, or rather, was a Canidor. Now it's fighting the effects of the surge of elemental energy from the explosion. Its eyes glow with flashes of lightning and sparks are crackling off its fur. It's Flaps, cries Nemi. Flaps snarls, revealing wickedly sharp teeth. Good boy, easy, easy, whispers Nemi soothingly. It's me. Flaps whimpers a little. The elemental energy hasn't completely corrupted him, but it can't be long before it does. You have to find a way to help him, Nemi pleads with you. Do you have a calming potion? I do indeed. You hurl the calming potion towards Flaps, who grabs it in his teeth. The bottle breaks and the liquid pours into his mouth. It works quickly and Flaps starts to shrink in size. The glow leaves his eyes and his fur stops sparking. Flaps shakes his head and looks confused. Then he bounds forwards and covers both you and Nemi in wet licks. Okay, boy. Okay, enough, laughs Nemi, stroking Flaps' fur. You go back to the farm and wait for me there. Flaps barks, bounds out of the cave and takes off, heading for the Cloudkin farm. Thank you for that, says Nemi. If Flaps hadn't been left much longer, he'd been beyond saving. Gain 1 luck point. Now 11. She rummages in the dirt at the back of the cave. What's this? She picks up a longsword and dusts it off. You take it, she says. A thank you from me and Flaps. Record the longsword on your adventure sheet. If you use the longsword in battle, you may increase your attack strength by 1. That's handy with my now skill of 7. And also, I think it's nice that Rhianna Pratchett is one of the few writers to remember that you actually want to be manipulating attack strength and not skill, because the rules say that you can't increase your skill over its initial value. Nice to be able to actually get the benefit of this very sharp sword. Oh, and here! Naomi's eagle eyes have spotted something else in the cave. 2 gold pieces. So, that's pretty good. We're now up to 13 gold. We're rich, or alternatively very poor. Do you want to investigate the Goblin Flyer? Well, I've done everything I can do here, so yes, I do. The Goblin Flyer bobs up and down on the breeze as you approach. However, its pilot sits nearby, holding his head in his hands and moaning gently. You recognise the pilot as a goblin named Critch and ask him what's the matter. Bit of rubble hit me upside the head, says Critch. I ain't flying nowhere till I get a bit of healing. But if you're looking to charge your hovers, then the machine is over there. Do you want to give him a cabbage leaf or some healing honey? Do you want to charge your hovers for 1 gold piece? Or if you can do neither of those, you can continue no further and your adventure is over, which will be a very sad way for the adventure to come to an end. So we will spend a gold piece. We don't have any cabbage leaf or healing herbs. We do have some sticky toad goop. Maybe he'd like some sticky toad goop. You put 1 gold piece in the slot of the little machine and charge your hover's storm crystals inside the charging chamber. There is a loud whirring noise and the little storm crystals begin to glow brightly. The tiny tempest inside starts to whirl again. You are now ready to take off and visit Cirrus or Cumulus. Do you want to go to Cirrus, the farming island, or Cumulus, the island of trade? I will go to the farming island, please. You decide to visit Cirrus, the farming isle. You check your hovers, make a running jump and take off, the waters of Altos sparkling beneath you. If you had Nemi with you, she will stay on Altos and you will now lose the attack and damage bonus. I'm not convinced that Nemi works. I think if I go back and replay this, I'm going to discover that the text assumes that you've got Nemi with you. Which, to be fair, if you are from the island, you almost certainly do. But I think there is the option, technically. Double check. No, actually, it's fine. You don't get an option to have Nemi not accompany you. That is absolutely fine. So yeah, no, it does make sense. If you are from Altos and you've gone to the farm, which you have to go to, then yeah, you will automatically have Nemi. So it's absolutely fine. I have besmirched the good name of Rhianna Pratchett, and I apologise. In my defence, it is exactly the sort of thing that often gets forgotten in adventure game books. You glide down on the green and pleasant Isle of Cirrus, which produces much of the magically enhanced fruit and vegetables and grains that feed Pangaria. You have little experience of this isle, but you're nervous about what the magical energy released by the Nimbus may have done to the vegetation. You look around and spot a plume of blue-green smoke in the distance. You also realise the local watch house is not too far away. That might be worth visiting for supplies. So you can investigate the blue-green smoke or investigate the local watch house. We'll do the watch house and see if there's anything we can nick. Don't much care for shopping trips, but I do enjoy stealing. You head for the watch house. There must be something you can scavenge there. You're passing by a field of gently waving corn when you become aware of a growing chittering sound. The sound gets louder and louder as more creatures join in. The stalks begin to ripple as something surges towards you and erupts out of the corn. It is a horde of corn rats. These usually peaceful pests have been aggravated by the surge of energy from the explosion on Nimbus and have ditched their regular vegetarian diet for something a little meatier. You. The rabid rat horde, great name for a monster, has a skill of 6 and a stamina of 10. I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the rabid rat horde. They did quite a lot of damage in the early part of the battle, reducing me to 8 stamina. But thankfully, once I got my acting gear, they didn't land another blow on me. and I was able to win. But yeah, a lot of stamina lost in that fight. But good news. The rabid corn rats lie slain at your feet. You notice 2 ears of ripe corn have fallen to the ground during the battle. Add 2 ears of corn to the provisions box on your adventure sheet. Each one will restore 3 stamina points when eaten. So I'm going to eat them both now for 6 stamina and get back up to 14. When you reach the watch house, you notice that some grapevines from the local vineyard seem to be growing closer to the building than you remember. You hurry inside. The emptiness within reminds you of the loss of your friends and fellow recruits in the Skywatch. You fervently hope they might still be alive. You head for the barracks, hoping that some of the recruits' chests might be open so that you can search them for useful supplies. Is Cirrus your home island? It is not. Checking all of the chests, you discover that one of them is unlocked. Do you want to search the unlocked chest? I surely do. You briefly wonder why the chest has been left unopened, but when you lift the lid, you get your answer. The chest bites down at your hand, lose 2 stamina points and 1 skill point, and starts to bark and growl at you. It slaps its lid aggressively. So it's got taking me down to a skill of 6. The stamina of 12. This is pretty brutal. A skill loss. Do you have a calming potion? No, I used my calming potion on the very good dog. The chest creature I'm going to fight has a skill of 5 and a stamina of 6, so it's not a tough opponent, thankfully, even with my increasingly reduced skill. So I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the creature, which closely resembles but is legally distinct from a mimic, and I was reduced to 6 stamina in the battle. I wonder if I can eat it. The spell leaves the chest and the lid sinks down lifeless once more. Inside, it's just a chest now, that's fine. Inside you find a flask of fire oil and a piece of paper. You unfold the paper carefully. It looks like a page torn out of a ledger from one of the fishery docks in Incus. A few names are marked on the page, but one, Commander Matthias Telemann, has been circled several times. Scrawled next to it are the words, "Where is he?" You can add the Incus ledger page and the fire oil to the equipment list. The fire oil can be used once to light a fire, or it can be used against an opponent at the start of a battle and will automatically cause your enemy 3 stamina points of damage. Oh, that's quite handy. That last fight really took it out of you, and it, to be fair, really did. And you realise that you've been held up by a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and anger until this point. Now you could do with a little old-fashioned shut-eye. Do you want to take a nap? I mean, I do. If there's any chance of healing, I am going to absolutely take it. You sleep for a fitful hour or so. In your dreams, you are flying through the skies above Pangaria, trying to catch your falling Skywatch friends. They cry out to you as they tumble through the air. You save one, but more plummet away from your grasp. You grasp for a flailing arm, only to realise it's your own face that you are seeing stare back at you. You try to hold on, gripping tighter, but it's no good. You watch as your screaming face falls away from you, your limbs flailing uselessly as your doppelganger drops away into nothingness. The sleep is not peaceful, but at least it is restful. Gain 2 stamina points. Thank you. Take a nightmare for 2 stamina points, that's a fair trade. You awake to a strange buzzing sound on the edge of hearing, like the rapid fluttering of tiny wings. You peer into the gloom, and in the corner of the barracks you see something that looks like a metal eye. It's about the size of a grapefruit, and instead of an iris you realise that the metal contraption has a large lens. It's held up by small wings reminiscent of your hovers. The metal eye zips around, blinking at you. It's very unnerving. You throw your boot at it. Roll 1 die. And it's a 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or a 5 to 6. So we roll a 5. That's good. The boot is well aimed and strikes the flying eye. Something metal falls off the side. The thing emits a high-pitched noise before flying away up the chimney. You examine what dropped off the contraption. It's a strange metal object. Add this to your equipment list. I'm enjoying the way she names items. You can definitely feel a video game background creeping through, I think. A strange metal object feels like something from a video game, sure as eggs is eggs. You're unharmed, but can't shake the feeling that you're being watched. There is no time to dwell on such things right now. There's nothing more for you to do here, so you leave the watch house. You head for the watch house door. You're just about to step through when whoosh, 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 vine tendrils shoot across in front of you, blocking your exit. A bunch of grapes explodes, showering you with an acidic goo. Lose 2 stamina points. Well, back down to 6. Easy come, easy go. The rest of the vines start to creep across the ground towards you. Do you want to use a calming potion on the plant? If not, you're going to need to fight the vines if you want to get out of here alive. The Grapes of Wrath, a great name for a living vine plant, has a skill of 7 and a stamina of 8. I'm going to roll some dice. I have been defeated by the Grapes of Wrath. Yeah. I burned like 3 points of luck trying to stay alive and trying to deal extra damage. I only won one combat round and I tested my luck to get extra damage from it. But yeah, for some reason, just rolling really badly today in general. My fights have not been going at all well. I think we've probably been playing for just about long enough for me to call a halt there. Might be a slightly shorter, perhaps, than usual recorded playthrough, but I think reading between the lines of the design, I'm not convinced this is going to feel like a super long book. I think it's going to be quite tight. Yeah, there's just lots of things that I can see just gently eating paragraphs. So I could be wrong. It could maybe turn into a bit of an epic, but there's enough going on that I think it's going to feel quite short. So I don't want to spoil too much of it if you're considering playing it for yourself. This feels like an appropriate point to stop. Also, I'm having a really nice time with it. I will admit I was feeling a little bit trepidatious when I went into it. It did feel as though it might be a little bit whimsical for my taste. I am not a man blessed with an abundance of whimsy, and it is quite whimsical, but there's lots of really fun design in there. There's lots of really good images in there. I do think it probably shouldn't be taking place in Alanzia. It doesn't feel authentically fighting fantasy in that score, and there have been plenty of fighting fantasy books that took place elsewhere in the universe. This would have been a good candidate for that, I think. But I think it's well written. I think she's got a nice, easy to read style, kind of reminiscent of Ian Livingstone, that same ability to focus on the really important things in a scene and not worry too much about the extraneous details. That's really nice. The design is engaging. I think the idea that you can choose which island you come from creates the potential for different adventures on subsequent playthroughs. That's really cool. And I particularly like that because it's going to have, I believe, more of an impact early on in the game, which is going to be the bit that you're going to be replaying most often. So yeah, lots to like. Maybe a little bit reliant on combat, but if I was going to hazard a guess, I think Rhianna Pratchett has taken a look and gone, I am going to really try and capture Ian Livingstone's style of gamebook writing. It does feel very Ian Livingstone on some levels, and I think, you know, if you're doing work for hire for a series that has been, for better or worse, defined by Ian Livingstone in recent years, that is an entirely appropriate approach to take. So I'm going to go away. I'm going to play Crystal of Storms on my own time. I hope I continue to enjoy it. And I'll be back for you in just a few moments with some closing remarks. Tatty bye. I have finished Crystal of Storms. It's a bit of a head scratcher and no mistake. There's lots to like, but also lots of stuff that feels a bit clunky. Like a lot of fighting fantasy books, it has the feeling of being written in a hurry, and there's a few elements that I think could probably have been significantly improved with a few more drafts. But I'm guessing the money on the table didn't stretch far enough to obsessively draft and redraft, and that's something that's been a feature of fighting fantasy for a very long time at this point. I think it's a big reason why many writers got significantly better over time, as they learn to navigate the pitfalls of design and make those early drafts that much stronger. I think Pratchett shows some significant promise as a gamebook designer, but there's some stuff in here that's kind of working against her vision. The overall structure of the book is good. You'll be exploring the various islands of Panagria in a semi-open world fashion, beginning at one of 3 home islands and then taking in a couple of additional islands before heading down into the waters below in search of Nimbus, the island that fell from the sky. It's pretty linear in a sense, but there's some freedom in how you choose to explore the world, and that's actually where the biggest problems come from for me. It's quite easy to revisit areas you've done before, but they haven't been written in such a way as to make that feel realistic. There's two good ways of making areas repeatable. One is to use keywords to track important events within those areas, and to be fair, Crystal of Storms does do that a little bit. This is very effective, but can be hungry in terms of section count because you end up with multiple different iterations of the same area, which has the effect of shrinking the map. If you've got a maximum word count or a maximum section count preying on your mind, that is going to constrain the overall size of the book considerably. The second way is to write repeatable areas in such a fashion that they still function on a second visit. Certain story elements work better in this regard than others. Environmental challenges such as deep pits or swinging blades are good choices, as are inns, shops, and other relatively static social environments where a character might be expected to do similar things on each visit, such as eat, rest, or shop for items. Monsters can work as well, especially if you generate some kind of random encounter table to make it clear that the area is simply dangerous enough to have a whole bunch of critters roaming through it. Monsters usually work because they have generic motivations, the need to do murders literally all the time. The same is true of characters like innkeepers who seek only to exchange goods and or services for money. There is a design cost to this, of course. Generic encounters don't tend to feel especially exciting or deep. Wandering a moor and killing either orcs or wolves, depending on the outcome of the random monster table, isn't all that memorable. It's hard to give an innkeeper you're going to visit multiple times much in the way of personality, and this is a thing that we do see in open world gamebooks from time to time. The problem with Crystal of Storms is that it allows you to replay entire areas you've done before, and the encounters there don't feel generic, they feel pretty specific. You can rescue the same exact people from the same exact menace and get the same exact rewards multiple times. The encounters are effectively too good to be convincingly repeatable. It creates very significant issues around immersion if you can wind up meeting people you've already killed. However, as well as a significant cost, it also provides a benefit to the player, especially the younger player. It means that there's rather fewer fail states than in other books. If you've missed a necessary item, then you almost always have the option to go back and search again. It might cost you some stamina, it might cost you some gold, but there's food and gold to be found in most areas as well, so it shouldn't be an issue if you're sensible. That does help make Crystal of Storms very welcoming for younger players. It penalises you more with your time than with the threat of sudden death. I feel as though this is a design that's influenced by Pratchett's background in video games. I have played an awful lot of Diablo 3, for example. Once you've beaten the story, the next stage involves doing a bunch of repeatable quests to obtain various bits of kit you need for the end game. There's a vague narrative attached to each of the quests, and if you play for long enough, you'll wind up doing the same exact quests over and over again as you grind for resources. Similarly, in World of Warcraft, you can run dungeons and raids over and over again, murdering the exact same named bosses for their gear. It creates a strangely psychedelic world in which at any given moment in time, at least 10 people are trying to kill Hogger, a Gnoll king, who has died at least 10 million times already. So it's something that can be a legitimate game design choice, and I do think it serves a purpose in a book that's aimed at digital natives, the kind of children who are probably already familiar with recurring quests and magically resurrecting NPCs. My personal preference would have been to try and avoid it in a book that's already not especially challenging and quite profligate with the sections. It's not quite flabby exactly. The adventure does feel plenty long enough for my tastes, but there's quite a lot of sections that could have been cut or combined in order to free up some additional paragraphs to mechanically prevent the player from heading back to areas they have already visited, or to simply change those areas once you visited them once. It already does this to a certain extent. You can only visit each area on the starting islands once, but once you've left the island, it effectively resets and becomes available to replay. It's not an especially mazy book either. You can generally go everywhere in each island without much difficulty. Adding a few fail states for failing to truffle out relevant items wouldn't make the game a great deal more difficult and would have made it feel that much more real. It's not a huge issue, and just like having the freedom to cheat to make the book easier, you've always got the option to decide that you can't revisit places you've already been to and preserve the illusion of a persistent world. The only time that the design felt like a genuine problem was in the final stretch. The final area wants you to do precisely one thing to progress, and if you don't do that one thing, then you are trapped in a loop where you repeat the same handful of encounters over and over again until you find the one specific thing the gamebook wants you to do in order to unlock the very last area, and that did feel like a little bit of a slog. Thankfully, once you get beyond that area, the finale is very good indeed, a great set-piece battle between a sea giant and a goblin-piloted mech that involves you powering up your enormous ally with various magical potions that you've found along the way. It's a high point on which to finish the book. This provides an opportunity to talk about some of the other features of the design that are strong, because there's plenty of good stuff in there as well. I really like the overall layout of the book with all the different islands, providing interesting places to explore, but also being quite manageable spaces to conceptually map. You know, I hate mapping, so any book where that feels entirely optional was always going to score points with me. It's very easy to simply remember which of the islands I visited, and that's made even easier by strong theming within the islands. There's the farming island, the water island, the trade island, the fishing island, and the magic technology island, and they all stand out and are plenty memorable. The initial islands also have the wrinkle that one of them is your home island, which will be easier than the others thanks to the presence of a friendly NPC who will help you out in the fights. I was a little disappointed initially that all 3 starting islands provide essentially the same bonus, but after thinking about it, I've come to the conclusion that it's actually an incredibly clever way to turn whichever island you start exploring into a tutorial area of sorts. A friendly NPC lowers the stakes whichever island you start with, and gives you the opportunity to explore and make a few mistakes without it being too punishing. I don't think I've come across another gamebook that does this, and I think it's an exceptional bit of design because it combines freedom of action with a set of training wheels for the player. I really like it, and it's something that's easy to miss if you're a middle-aged veteran like me. This is also a good moment to once again be reminded that the Fighting Fantasy combat system is the best combat system in all of gamebooks. One of my fantasy projects is to come up with a simple wargame using the Fighting Fantasy rules, because it would be amazing to try and collate all the different ways in which people have iterated on the core rules to make fights more narratively interesting. If you roll an average skill, then Crystal of Storms does a bang-up job of slowly nibbling away at your stamina in a way that adds tension. There's a cool bit towards the end where you descend into the sea and travel about in a bathysphere. The sphere has its own skill and stamina score and can't be healed, which means that you suddenly get an extra injection of tension into the adventure simply by taking healing off the table, but in a way that is neatly boundaried. Once you get out of the bathysphere, you'll get your normal skill and stamina back, plus the ability to heal. Not using provisions is also a bonus. Balancing around having 14 to 24 stamina is much easier than balancing when you've got an additional 40 stamina in your pockets. There's enough healing available in Crystal of Storms that you should be fine, but finding a few bits of food always felt like a much bigger reward than it would in a book where you've been loaded down with provisions. It doesn't work as well if you've got a very high skill. There's not many fights which will be remotely taxing, but you've got to balance around a specific skill, and 8 to 9 feels as good a number as any to pick. Fighting Fantasy has too much variance in starting skill for it to be possible to balance for every character without finding ways to sidestep fighting entirely, and in some ways that's missing the point. On top of that, there's some amazing new combat tricks. 73 episodes in, and people are still finding new twists, which is frankly incredible. There's 2 I would like to pick out for special consideration. The first is a lightning serpent with a skill 9 and stamina 9, and a special rule that says if it wins a combat round, then it has a 50% chance to do double damage due to its lightning. Also, if you fight it with a metal weapon, then if you win a combat round, there's a 1 in 3 chance of taking 2 points of damage from electrocution as well. Most of the non-metal weapons give you a -1 attack strength penalty, and some also give a positive bonus to damage as well. So if you fight with a non-metal weapon that has additional damage, you can kill the lightning serpent with 3 hits. Most metal weapons will need 5 hits to finish off the beast, meaning that you're exposing yourself to 2 additional chances to take damage from the lightning. On the other hand, using a non-metal weapon means that the lightning serpent has more chance of hitting you and exposing you to a 50% chance of additional damage rather than the 1 in 3 from winning the round. There's a really interesting tactical decision to be made. Do you maximise the chance of winning combat rounds, or do you try and maximise damage? I love that there's a mathematically right answer, but I like that it's not obvious. It's not a easy back of the fag packet calculation. If you've got a skill that's equal or worse than the lightning serpent, then I think you absolutely should use a metal weapon. If your skill is 2 or more higher than the lightning serpent, then I think you should probably use the non-metal weapon, but I think it's harder to decide if your skill is only 1 higher. I think the advantage of hitting more than half the time makes it better to use a metal weapon, but I wouldn't swear to it. The other fight that I really like is with a giant mechanical hand. It's got a special rule that if you hit it, then it does a super move where it attacks with all 5 digits at once in response. If it does that, you roll 5d6, and each die that comes up on a 1 or 2, you suffer an additional point of damage. The kicker is that for each die that comes up on a 3 or more, the mechanical hand itself takes an additional point of damage as you fend off the relevant finger. This doesn't really create anything in the way of additional strategy, but it does create a situation where you will almost certainly take damage even if you've got a much higher skill than the mechanical hand. But it doesn't feel too punishing because the hand itself is taking additional damage at the same time. Given the way dice are weighted, the hand should take more damage than you. Generally, downsides to winning a combat round feel a little aggravating because you're being punished for doing well, but this makes for a rather different experience whereby the punishment is combined with an additional reward to make things much more tolerable. It's got a good narrative feel to it as well, which is always nice to see, and it is cool to have a fight in the book where even a character with skill 12 is going to really struggle to avoid actually taking damage in the fight. There's some other fun combat tricks in the book as well. A simple fight with a pair of harpies allows you to do extra damage to one by knocking it out of the sky, and as I said before, the final fight with a giant and the goblin mech is great fun. There's plenty of normal fights as well, which I think is important. You need some starch with your delicious main course to help it go down. There is a small issue, which is that the back of the book doesn't contain any rules for fighting more than one opponent. It just tells you that the rules for fighting more than one opponent will be included in the relevant section, and then the couple of times that it happens, there are no rules in the relevant section. I'm guessing it's because the author was familiar with the standard way of doing fighting more than one creature and kind of just assumed that it would be included in the rules section, and indeed it's a baffling oversight that it wasn't. On top of the combat, the characters and the situations are all generally quite strong as well. One thing that works very nicely is the interplay between having a clear mission and also getting to discover some backstory along the way. Having a clear mission is generally a good thing in a fighting fantasy book because it helps inform all the decisions that you're making along the way. Here it's clear what the goal is at every stage: get to the fallen island of Nimbus and find out what has happened, and indeed reverse it if possible. However, exactly what has happened to Nimbus is cleverly drip-fed throughout the course of the adventure in hints and insinuations. When you get to the finale and the overall backstory is fully revealed, you get to feel a bit clever because you've already found at least some of the story for yourself. That is a smart way to make an info dump feel more positive because you know enough to be tantalised and actually want to know the answers, rather than having to listen to some boring sage talk at length about the fire squizzers of Bobbington or whatever, when you'd much rather be getting on with the business in hand. It's a sophisticated way of structuring the backstory, and again, I think it shows what an experienced hand Pratchett is at tailoring narrative to gaming environments. It doesn't quite always work throughout the book. There's times when she clearly wants to make sure there's key bits of information you can get from a conversation, and that means you can exhaust all of the NPC's dialogue before moving on, when gamebook convention usually dictates that you can only ask each person 1 or 2 things before they get bored of talking to you. I think it's okay if you miss things in a gamebook where you'll be able to go back and do the area again anyway, if you honestly care that much about listening to everything everyone has to say on every topic. There's a few points where the book feels a little bit too generous with giving you the chance to reconsider actions as well. There's a fine line between trying to impart a sense of fairness and holding the player by the hand. I've said it before, but gamebooks do need to feel a bit arbitrary from time to time in order to make every decision feel like a proper choice, and avoid signposting too heavily. Sometimes the right answer needs to be the wrong answer just to create jeopardy. It's clear that Crystal of Storms is aimed at younger readers, so this isn't a big problem with the book, and for a first-time gamebook author, Pratchett has done a great job of avoiding much in the way of simple left-right decisions in bland corridors. It's much more about choosing between locations than choosing cardinal compass points. I think there's a lot to be said for the world building as well, which strikes a pleasing balance between child-friendly content and pushing gently at the edges of the comfort zone. Like all good children's books, there's a little bit of darkness and a few grisly details in here, which help balance the generally whimsical tone. It doesn't really feel like the fighting fantasy world. It feels like a wholly original magic punk creation, and absolutely none the worse for that. She does find a way to tie in the fact that the setting doesn't really feel like fighting fantasy by creating some links with the rest of Titan towards the end. She was clearly, I think, aware of the disjunction and did want to address it. It feels very modern as well, in a way that earlier fighting fantasy books simply don't. The art is part of that. I do wish it could have been in colour, because grey ink washes just make everything feel a bit flat, but there is actually some great, albeit highly stylised art in here though. A few lovely pieces and a few that don't maybe land so well. There's probably not a better on-ramp into fighting fantasy in 2026 than Crystal of Swords for younger players. It's really well written, if unevenly copy-edited. I think it plays cleverly with the sorts of themes and ideas that show just how far fantasy as a genre has come on since Warlock of Firetop Mountain. In some ways, it feels like the first truly 21st century fighting fantasy gamebook, in how it borrows from more contemporary sources to create something fresh and different. Gates of Death had some elements of that, but I think Crystal of Storms is more successful. It's not perfect by any means, there is some clunky design in there, and the fallen island of Nimbus feels too much like a chore for me, but all things considered, I thought this was, on balance, a strong entry into the canon. That is all for this episode. Don't forget that if you like this sort of thing and want to support it, you can do so by going to patreon.com/HJDoom and pledging as little as a single English pound to support my nonsense. All support is gratefully received, and there's a whole bunch of different gamebooks available by way of a thank you for those who have put their hands in their pocket. This podcast was written and recorded in the midst of a crippling heatwave in the UK. Maybe consider getting in touch with your elected representatives and ask them what they plan to do about the ever-accelerating climate crisis, because this has been a deeply uncomfortable experience. You can get in touch with me and demand that I do something about whatever's ruining your life by email at hjdoomretrofun, all one word, @gmail.com, or by following me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. I can't promise I'll be able to help with systemic problems attendant on late-stage capitalism, but I'll at least be sympathetic. If you aren't sick of the sound of my voice, I have another podcast called Popular Antiquarian, where I cover odd bits of pop culture. This has been a production of Doom Industries. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and I'll see you soon.